Cinema Classics is sponsored by WCBE 90.5 FM, Columbus, Ohio, and is produced by John DeSando. Listen to shows online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando,
And I'm G Kline.
and this is Cinema Classics. And I guess we can actually track our movie today as a classic because of its roots, right?
Well, we are doing Scandinavian cinema again.
Yes.
I don't know how we end up doing that from time to time, but this is a film that is based on a movie. This is A Man Called Otto with Tom Hanks, based on a movie that came out just a couple of years ago called A Man Called Ove.
Yeah, I think that was 15.
2015, I think. Yeah.
And then the book you called a few years ago.
Yeah, a couple of years ago. I mean, it doesn't sound like it, but yeah. And then 2012 was when the book came out, A Man Called Ove.
Okay, so we're strong here in its roots.
Oh yeah.
But how can you compete with two greats like that? Two, is it doing it?
Oh my gosh, this.
I think I hit you right.
It is so rare that I can come right out of the gate and tell folks, go see this movie. I don't often do it, but I'm going to do it this time. Just go see this movie. This is an absolutely wonderful film. We're probably not pushing too hard to fill the seats because when I went to see it, the house was completely full, and word of mouth has been spreading that this is one of Tom Hanks' best films in a long time.
All right, he's a curmudgeon.
He's a curmudgeon.
And as you all know, everybody out there, you don't have to be a screenwriter to know how this goes. The outside, the frozen outside, is thawed inside, right?
To a certain extent. There's a lot going on inside. I mean, he's a complicated person. He clearly suffers from OCD, although that plays only a minor role in the story. He has his routines. But as the movie opens, his wife, Sonia, has passed away about 6 months earlier. And he is trying to find purpose in his life. He's just been forced to retire from work. So he has a morning ritual that he gets up, he checks to make sure that the gates into his little community are properly closed. He goes and reorganizes the recycling bins so the cans are in the right spot and the bottles in the right spot. And he's trying to find meaning in life, but unfortunately, suicide is a subtle side story to this film, and you wouldn't think this would be a comedy, but it is. But he's really at a loss to find a purpose in life.
Right. So he tries various ways of committing suicide. Now it's not Harold and Maude for sure.
No,
remember,
no.
We've had fake suicides that don't make it along the way, but yeah. He does it more than once.
Well, he keeps getting interrupted.
He doesn't. It's annoying because the world has interrupted him anyway. So even in his hope for death, he is reintroduced to the world. And gee, let me guess, who would bring him back into the world?
Well, it starts with a woman.
It is always a woman.
Yes,
She has to be cute.
He has new neighbors, and he lives in this nice little tiny street with 2 rows of condos.
Midwestern.
Pittsburgh.
It is
Pittsburgh, yes. The filmmakers have moved the location from Stockholm, Sweden, to Pittsburgh, and apparently Tom Hanks had something to do with that. He was so happy filming the Fred Rogers story. In Pittsburgh, that he suggested, why don't we use Pittsburgh again? And they actually use a couple of the same filming locations that they used in Won't You Be My Neighbor. They go back to Western Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh Seminary, for instance, for a chapel scene at the end that was used in Won't You Be My Neighbor. So you have this little community. It was filmed in a place called Bellevue, and if you're from Pittsburgh or you've grown up in Pittsburgh, as I did, it's wonderful to see the old streets, the old neighborhoods again. It's a little side note that makes this film just so charming.
Well, she's a cutie pregnant Latino.
Yes.
And apparently done very well in other films as playing that spunky but lovable little lady.
Okay.
And boy, she is perfect for this. And I will tell you, Ken, I think she would have been nominated had this been put out there to compete with others. She would have been nominated for Best Supporting Actress.
There's a good chance. There's a good chance that Hanks might have even been nominated.
Yeah.
Everybody just in this film, it's a small cast, and everybody in this film just does an absolutely wonderful job. Hanks is, I've struggled with Hanks in a couple of his most recent films. I wasn't crazy about him as Colonel Parker and Elvis. I wasn't that crazy about Won't You Be My Neighbor. I think if you're going to want to watch a movie about Fred
Well, let's
Rogers,
hope-
just watch the documentary.
Let's hold off on that till Double Take.
Okay.
And we'll look at Hanks.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think he's worth looking at anytime.
Here he just shines.
Yeah.
He gives us a character that is so sensitive and so the more curmudgeon he is, the more you love him.
And he, you know, I have friends like this. Even Wayne, one of our fellow contributors, has a little bit of a curmudgeon in him. But he doesn't like kids, for instance, but they love him. You know, and so that's the way. That's the kind of the way it goes. And the kids are lovable. And her kids, or the other kids that are in the car. Remember, he turns around in the car when he's backing up.
Oh, yes.
And they introduce themselves, these little kids.
Yes, doesn't even know they're back there. He turns around, there's two kids in the back of the
you
car.
just know it's a setup. But let me tell you, this is a cliche from the beginning to the end. But it is both Hanks and let me see what's her name, and boy, I should have her name here, and I don't.
But the whole,
I tell you,
the whole cast, I mean, because he has two new neighbors that move to his neighborhood. The husband is a local, and the wife is from Mexico.
Mariana Trevino.
Mariana
is her name.
Trevino.
Marisol. Right,
is
nice
the character.
Yes.
And she replaces, in the original Swedish film, she was an Iranian woman.
Yes.
But for this film, they decided to make her Mexican, and it works beautifully. And she starts winning him over with food, which is, if you're a crotchety old curmudgeon, this is probably a good way to make it inroad. And he has two neighbors that are longtime neighbors. They've been there with him for years. The husband suffers from, has had a stroke. The wife has Parkinson's, so they're kind of in decline. And then he has a jogging neighbor. So he knows all the people in the neighborhood except for this brand new couple.
And I would tell you that the only disappointment in my viewing this is those real estate predators.
Yes.
Underwritten. You know, I mean, I don't get much at all from.
Well, not much of this movie was lost in translation from the Swedish film to this. A little bit of that was because in the original film, they're actually from the government. Because, of course, Sweden has a nationalized healthcare system, so they can decide it's time to put somebody into a nursing home. But in the United States, no, you would never have a developer decide to put people in a nursing home. For one thing, a developing company can't afford to put people in a nursing home in the United States. But the whole cast is just wonderful. And what Tom Hanks slowly comes to realize is that his story is not over yet. There's more to him, more to what he needs to do after the passing of Sonia. And what's so heartbreaking and so touching is we get these flashbacks with Sonia, and Sonia slowly becomes a character as the film unfolds.
And I'm impatient with that, and I think they do a good job. The continual flashbacks to make us cry a little bit even more.
Yeah.
As we see how beautiful their relationship, blah, 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 and all that. And they do that very well in this film. They didn't upset me by saying, oh my God, here we go, yeah, I know, they're going to flashback.
No, they're just little moments. He sees her in a room, he remembers something she said, and you get the impression that it's Sonia that's actually trying to poke him and say, hey, your time is not over yet.
And as you're talking, I'm reminded too that it doesn't hit you over the head with the obvious thesis that life is worth living if it's halfway decent. It doesn't. It gradually builds to that, and the beauty is we know exactly what's going to. Believe me, we've seen so many of these films. We know exactly what's going to happen, but yet we get caught by the characters and the setting.
It's a very similar film to It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes,
It's
I
a
agree.
very much
I
an
agree.
It's a Wonderful Life film. It's a story of a person who has hit a wall, has decided that he's not worth continuing, and then slowly people start making him realize, oh no, you matter, you make a difference.
It is less Capricorn than Capricorn, I think. I think it is less corny than It's a Wonderful Life,
Yes.
which tends to go a little bit over the top on this business. But this one really doesn't push it
This
too
one's
much.
much more subtle.
Yeah, yeah. And I attribute that again to Hanks. Now, the director is Mark Forster.
Yeah.
And he's done.
And he's done a Bond film, Quantum of Solace.
Yeah.
He did Finding Neverland.
All
He
right.
did Christopher Robin.
There you go.
So he has a history of doing a couple of good sentimental films,
Right.
but he also has done the Bond movie. I mean, he's actually got a pretty good roster, even though the name might not be something.
I know it. And so how do we get people to go to this?
Well, apparently people are going to it whether we tell them to or
Yeah.
not, because as I said, the house was packed when I saw it. And from what folks are telling me, word of mouth has been very strong. This is a great date night movie.
Yeah.
And we haven't had a lot of that lately. I mean, the fall was full of mean-spirited movies, The Menu, Banshees of Inisherin, Triangle of Sadness. This is a film that you
Right.
can take your
And
parents
Sadness
to.
is the Scandinavian film?
That was the Scandinavian
that was the one-
film, yeah, on the boat.
Yeah.
No, this is a movie you can take your parents to. They're going to love it. You can go out on a date with this movie and absolutely love it.
Okay, everybody, you can hear Ken, even more of him, on our Double Take podcast at WCBE, the podcast experience. And look, he has one more thing to say.
I'm going to sum this movie up by saying the only thing that might have made it better is if they had made it 15 years ago and cast Harrison Ford.
Who couldn't even get the subtlety of the
He wouldn't have had to act at all. This is Harrison.